Hello and welcome to Penmanship, a podcast about Australian writing culture. I'm your host, Andrew McMillen. Today's guest, Brent DeBoer, songwriter and musician. I realised that 3 of my last 4 guests have been songwriter musicians, and this is purely a coincidence. I just happened to have caught these 3 gentlemen as they were passing through Brisbane while on tour. And I will assure you that in coming weeks, Penmanship will return to its journalistic roots. But I hope you've been enjoying the shift of gears into songwriting in the last few episodes. I first met Brent in unique circumstances in September 2010, when my partner and I won a competition to fly to the United States and interview the Dandy Warhols at their studio in Portland, Oregon. This was a promotional tie-in because the band were booked to play at Parklife Festival that year, so we were accompanied by a cameraman for Australian website Pedestrian, who filmed the encounter and cut a short video about our experience. The entire interview with the Dandy Warhols was later published on thevine.com.au. I'm a big fan of the Dandy Warhols. They're one of the best live rock bands I've seen, and as a solid drummer and a co-vocalist, Brent is a key part of their appeal. Born in Portland and based there for most of his life, Brent has called Melbourne home since 2010, after he married an Australian and relocated. When he's not touring or recording with the Dandy Warhols, he's inevitably doing the same with his Australian band, Immigrant Union, who this year released their second album entitled Anyway. It's a brilliant piece of work and one of my favourites of 2015. When reviewing Anyway for The Weekend Australian in June, I described it as, quote, a timeless album for all moods and seasons, and gave it 4.5 stars. Besides his excellent musicianship and songwriting in 2 of my favourite bands though, I actually didn't know much about Brent's past or his path into music, so I thoroughly enjoyed getting to know him a little better during this interview, which took place upstairs at Lefty's Music Hall in Brisbane, a few hours before Immigrant Union played 3 sets there on a Thursday evening in late August. Brent was jet-lagged and spent most of the interview either staring out the window, watching the fading light, or with his eyes closed while darkness gradually consumed the room where we sat. Our conversation touches on how he learned to play the drums at age 5, how he manifested his own destiny as a child when he would imagine playing to a sea of people who were all there to watch him play drums, a favourite prank of his while playing to drunk fraternity crowds in his early career, how he was asked to join the Dandy Warhols in 1998, and how he struggled for a couple of years with the demands of the role, and the differences between being a drummer who sings in that band and being a singer-guitarist in Immigrant Union. Introducing Brent DeBoer, songwriter and musician. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, man.
We are a few hours ahead of showtime. You've just done a bit of sound check with Immigrant Union. We're working on some new material or some new songs to fill out some sets. What do you usually like to do between sound check and performance?
Usually a few beers or a nice long nap. Oftentimes a nap. On the Immigrant Union tours, there's never really anywhere to nap, so I go sleep in the van, start the engine to get it warmed up, then shut her down and fall asleep. Wake up freezing, but you need to do that because I don't know, with these guys we never sleep. But mainly right now I just I flew from Bodo, Norway to Oslo to Antwerp to Lyon to Dubai to Melbourne, and didn't really sleep on the airplane for some reason, then landed at 5:30 a.m. and then I just went to bed I don't know, I tried to push it on through. I went to bed about midnight, then woke up at 2:30 a.m. and never went back to sleep, and here I sit and I feel like I'm on some bizarre drug, but not a party drug.
A downer, a depressant.
Yeah, but sometimes you can party with those even.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being with me, because you're clearly totally spaced out in front of me.
Yeah,
smoking on your
tripping
vape.
Balls.
This could be an interesting interview then. We'll see how it goes. What do you like to do on planes? Because obviously you're a professional musician. A lot of your time each year is spent touring.
Yeah. I mean, this year has been really crazy. So many flights. Yeah, I flew to Bodo and straight back. We just played one concert.
Dandy
Bodo.
Warhols.
Yeah, with the Dandy Warhols. Yeah. And yeah, on airplanes, God, man, I don't know. You just watch some movies, and then I like to stand around and talk to the staff of the airplane. Spend quite a few hours doing that. Met a guy from Italy named Joe on this last flight. He was real cool. And we talked about race cars, women, and that was about it for hours and hours and hours. Oh, and rock and roll.
Yeah.
Talked about music. Some music festivals that he likes. Yeah, we just, I mean, it's 15 and a half hours from well, what is it? It's 6 hours from anywhere in Europe to Dubai, and then you got another 14 after that. So you got to fill in your time. I had a really good book going, which was great. That's about it. I mean, what else the hell can you do? You drink a lot of beer.
Yeah.
A lot of beer.
When you signed up, I mean, we'll go through your whole history because I actually don't know much about you besides, obviously, you joined the Dandy Warhols a couple of years into their career. We can go back to that. But when you signed up, did you anticipate what the lifestyle would be like? And did that anticipation live up to what you thought it would be like?
Yeah. No, I had no idea, actually. I had no idea what was going to happen. My second time ever on an airplane was with the Dandy Warhols, flying from Los Angeles direct to London on Virgin Airways. And the only other time I'd ever been in an airplane was to do a sightseeing trip when I was like 10 years old over Mount St. Helens, which had exploded like 4 years prior. Big, massive volcano, big famous one in North America in the state of Washington. And so that was in a little Cessna, and I loved that, but hadn't thought about airplanes much until my first trip to London. And I guess that was my second flight, because the first flight was from Portland to LA. And then when we got to LA, we pulled up, and Courtney, the singer of the Dandy Warhols, my cousin, he and I are going up to the gate. And this maybe is one of 3 times in all the millions of miles I've flown that this has ever happened. We got upgraded from economy class, not to business class, not to economy plus class or whatever that's called. We went straight to first class on Virgin Airways. I had a massage on the airplane. To this day, we have no idea why this happened. It was just bizarre. But I had a massage. We ate confit duck. We went through maybe 9 or 10 of the various Italian, French, Medoc, Chateauneuf du Pape, all the wines. I had a massage. There was a bar with a bartender, and we sat on bar stools talking to the bartender, drinking wine. And Mr. DeBoer, would you like your Virgin snooze suit? And I still have the salt shakers that I stole, because they're these silver salt shakers. I mean, this is like a $30,000 airplane ticket. I took the silver salt shakers, and years later I flipped them over to refill them, and I noticed on the bottom that it said pinched from Virgin Air. I thought that was really clever. But yeah, so that's what I thought flying was.
Yeah.
And then found out later that it's not like that at all. You don't usually get a massage. So that was my first introduction. But yeah, no, I mean, this year's been particularly busy, but and next year is going to be really busy too. But God, I can't really complain, because I've seen so many parts of the world and met so many people and met so many of my heroes and had them say very nice things about me and my rock group and about our records that we worked so hard on. And the better than anything, people say, money for nothing and your chicks for free. But the part that he should have mentioned was being told by your childhood heroes that that they dig what you do. That's actually, for me, a much greater achievement than, money or some orgy,
Who were your childhood heroes?
Well, the Beatles. Well, here's the thing is that, touring with Tom Petty and the Rolling Stones and The Cure and David Bowie, tons of concerts with these people, and you feel like you're all those guys were my heroes as kids. I wasn't too into The Cure when I was really little, but much later got into it. But the rest of them, yeah. And then what you do in your mind is you just have this little fantasy. Well, if you're, smoking a big doobie with Keith Richards and you're, behaving in a similar way with Tom Petty and having Mark Knopfler and these guys playing on your records, and Mike Campbell played on one of our songs, and hanging out with those guys. What you do in my mind, Stevie Nicks and all this, is what I picture is that if these guys got to party with the Beatles, then I feel like I might have been able to have done that too. David Bowie sang with John Lennon, and so you feel like, what is it, that 6 steps, everyone's like 6 steps away?
6 degrees of separation.
6 degrees of separation.
Huh.
Yeah, sorry, my brain's not working. So I feel like in a roundabout sort of way, because, you get along with those guys so well, and they're just cut from the same cloth as all my buddies. You just feel you just lay there in bed at night feeling like, thinking about those old Beatles records, and even though I never got to hang out with any of those Beatles, I feel like just being that 1 degree of separation is such a big deal. But let alone just hanging out with Tom Petty's enough, really. Damn, he's like the coolest ever. He's the coolest ever. He never had a disco phase.
Well, take me back. Where did you grow up, Brent? Were you Portland like Courtney?
Yep, Portland. And just grew up in the suburbs of Portland. Rode my bike into the city when I was like 11, 12, 13. Started going down there and checking things out. And grew up in Portland. Hung out with Courtney at weddings and funerals. And then when we started playing together, I really got to know him a lot better. And Peter and Zia, just the coolest, loveliest people you could ever want to meet. And Portland, just amazing. I remember it was a lot different when I was a kid, but it's still really pretty great. I get there 4 or 5 times a year. My folks are still there, and it's a lovely, amazing town. It really still is. People complain about the changes, but it's still fantastic.
What were your aspirations as a child? Did you always want to be a musician?
Yeah, I got a drum set when I was 5, and I used to crank the Beatles and the Beach Boys. Basically, those are the only 2, and Simon and Garfunkel. Those 3 groups are the only 3 groups I really actually listened to until I was maybe, for the first 5 or 6 years that I was into tunes, that's all I listened to. And then when I was about 12, 13, I started branching out and checking out. My cousin played me Queen and AC/DC, and he played me Van Halen and this kind of stuff, and I started checking out Black Sabbath and Pink Floyd, and his music collection was in that world, and I was like, oh wow, it just opened up my mind. And then when MTV showed up in my house, when I was right about that same sort of time, 13 or 14, you would see Madonna and Devo and Aerosmith, and and that just shifted me up a little bit more of just what is out there.
Self-taught on the drums?
Yeah, I got a drum set when I was 5, so yeah, I just kind of sat down and worked it out, playing along with the Beatles on headphones. But I did have this weird thing where I would stare out we lived on a cul-de-sac, and I'd stare out into the cul-de-sac before I ever even really knew what a rock concert was. I didn't have any picture of one, even an indoor one or what. but I just pictured the whole cul-de-sac full of people for as far as you could see in the whole street, and just dreamed that they're all watching me play the drums. And and I remember as like a 7-8-year-old staring out the window in grade school, looking out the window and looking at the baseball field and imagining all of that full of human beings, and just sitting on a big elevated platform playing the drums for everyone, sort of like, I'll show you guys, check this out, you guys don't know how to do this or whatever. Just something in my head, not realizing that 20 years later I'd be doing that exact thing. Really, I don't know, I guess what do they call that, manifest destiny? I think I did that. I think I actually did do that.
So you had like a performer's instinct. You could picture an audience there, and they were there to see you.
Completely.
Huh.
Yeah, and I had no idea. I hadn't been. I mean, my first concert, I think I was 10 when my dad took me to the Beach Boys. That tripped me out pretty good.
Was there a good drummer at that gig?
Yeah, I think Dennis was still doing it, wasn't he? I don't know. When did Dennis die? Because that would have been 1983 or something.
I'm not up to date with the Beach Boys' history, unfortunately. Can't tell you off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
Dennis was the good-looking one.
Do you think that drumming is something that can be taught to anyone, or did you feel you had like a natural inclination towards that kind of percussive style of alternating your arms and your legs at different
I guess
times?
so. Around the same time is when I started getting into skateboarding, and we would do BMX, and we got into BMX Plus magazine, me and my buddies, same buddies that I would jam with. We didn't really know how to, I knew how to play the drums real well, but those are pretty good, but those guys didn't know how to play an instrument, but I would just tell them to play one string and just put their finger back and forth on one fret. And my friend John Steinberg, he used to like would jam for hours. But then we also would skateboard and do this BMX freestyle riding where we were risking cracking our skulls on a minute-to-minute basis, and we did that for years. And I always felt real coordinated as a pitcher and an athlete and this and that. And to tell you the truth, I never for 1 second thought about the drums at all. It just never, there was never any confusion at all. I'm not the greatest drummer in the world. I don't have any big stunts or tricks. I really only just tried to emulate Ringo Starr. But I still, to this day, cannot possibly do a lot of those fills that he does. I'm kind of a 4-trick pony when it comes to drumming. I do hat and bass drum fills, and when I was in some other bands as a kid, I used to do a lot more big things, but kind of lost interest in that once I heard the Dandies and some of that real more droning psychedelia. When I heard that blue Weezer album, I couldn't believe that drummer just started trying to play like him. That real super fat straight beat. It was just so addicting, and I just wanted to just do that. Then when I joined the Dandies, what was it, 17, 18 years ago now, it was, Eric Hedford, the previous drummer, he had a really similar style, but he was just even cooler. He had the coolest swinging 60s, like he was the most authentic 1960s sounding drummer I'd ever heard, even though he's playing that fat modern straight beat. And just ever since then, just been trying to kind of play like him.
We'll come to the Dandies period. Were you a good student in school? Did you do well grade-wise?
I did well in creative writing and but other than that, most everything else was a struggle. My retention and my, I don't know. I didn't have like a very analytical mind. cognitively all over the place, kind of a space cadet kid. Everything's an abstraction in my mind, so mathematics and I did well in English class and poetry and stuff. When you had to memorize a speech or memorize something, I was real good. I would turn it into a song at home and then speak it, and I could recite an incredible amount of dialogue that way. But I was terrible at math and horrible, like trying to remember all that stuff about the Prussian War and Napoleon or whatever. And I'd be I'm a lot more interested in history now than I was then, though. So I think that political science and stuff, I think I'd be better at it now. But just because I have a passion for it and I'd actually get into it, I wouldn't find it to be such a job. Because back then I really just wanted to be playing music and playing, baseball or riding my bike. It was really kind of all I really wanted to do. And I was always daydreaming and had a hard time listening in class if I wasn't interested in what they were talking about. So it was very difficult. School was really difficult. My sister is like a mad genius, like probably has an IQ of like 150 or something. And she's, to this day, she's a math wizard. She teaches the highest level math there basically is, just north of or just under, I don't know what, quantum physics or something, but she could work that out no problem.
What'd your parents do for work?
My father would get bored and switch careers. He went from being a stockbroker to he went into real estate. He worked in a commercial cabinetry for a commercial cabinetry company for a while. And my mother was a school teacher. She taught the 3rd and the 4th grade for like 35 years, almost my whole life.
Wow. What was the first money you ever earned?
Working at Albertsons as a stock boy. And then I had lots of jobs after that. Like I did, worked for Coca-Cola for a while. I almost quit college because I was offered a pretty nice job there at Coca-Cola. The guy's telling me, you're about to spend $20,000 to finish your career, and you can do that and then come back here, or you can just start now and make twice that in the next 6 months or whatever. But I just wanted to go to college. And I was enjoying going to college, and I didn't want to get up that damned early in the morning yet in my life. I felt too young and wanted to experience some things, and thank God I didn't, because I got pretty busy after that, doing what I really actually wanted to do, not ordering cans of soda for people.
Is that what the job was at Coca-Cola?
Well, that's what he was about to do. He was about to get me in the office, but I was a merchandiser, so I was just running around in a truck delivering sugar water to grocery stores. But then I also worked I was a security guard at a dump.
Wow.
For a summer, and I worked I built scaffolding in a warehouse, for setting pallets on, which I didn't like because I'm afraid of heights, and it was like 4 stories up. And then I worked in a smoke detector factory.
What? Doing what?
Putting together smoke detectors. They had all these little wires, and then you would snap them on, and the person next to me would do the soldering on the wires. So I would just make a game of trying to do it as fast as I could, because they always told us to go as fast as you could. And then I had this like great wall of plastic thingamajigs with wires sticking out of them next to me, and they came and told me to slow down because I was making the rest of the line nervous, and it wasn't good. And I said, look, why don't you just put me somewhere else so that I don't make anyone nervous, and I'll just every once in a while just deliver 20 of them over there, and then I'll make more in 4 days than anyone's ever done in 5 days here, and you can pay me the same and let me take Friday off. I said, I'll make so many more, because I got really good at grabbing the wire with the pliers and snapping it on. I got so good, and I knew exactly how far to spin the little thing so that I didn't have to, so I could grab it while I spun and then go snap all in one motion, like this. And I'd set it over where you'd see some guy across from me going like this.
Much
and,
slower.
and just kind of, it's like, dude, just let me take Friday off. I'm crushing this. What are you doing? And he's like, it doesn't work that way, son.
How old are you at this point?
Probably 21.
So you were after maximum efficiency. Did it become like a rhythmic game to you? Do you think your percussive sense played into this ability?
Completely. I was so goddamn bored. I was. There were some machines that would hum behind me too, just droning. And I would like lay in harmonies under and above it all the time. Everybody there thought I was autistic. I might be. I don't know.
So your grades must have been good enough to get into college. Mm-hmm. What did you study? What did you choose to study?
It took me a little while. It took me a couple years to work out what I wanted to do, but I ended up majoring in psychology and minoring in philosophy. And by the time I had worked it out, it took me 5 years, and I only had 6 more credits to go until I had a double major, because I had taken so many philosophy classes before I switched to a psychology degree. Just because on paper it just looked a little better, and my advisor was just saying, where you're at right now, you could go either way, and if you switch to psych, you're still going to take a ton of philosophy classes, and he just was like, I just think it would look better on your resume to say you studied psychology rather than philosophy. I was like, okay, whatever, and just switched. It took me another year. Then I graduated, and the day I graduated, I waved to my parents and had my diploma, walked off the stage, went straight to a car, drove to the airport, and flew to New York, and played the next night on the first trip, my first U.S. tour.
Holy shit.
So I was in the middle of, I had to, during my final term of college, I spent the entire term in Europe with the Dandies, and I got back, I had 1 week to write every paper, take every test, and turn it all in 1 week. 9 weeks of work in 1 week. And I got
How did you do it?
It was hell. I just never moved from the desk for the entire week. And then I got like C- and D+ on everything I turned in, but still graduated with a 3.14, and who cares?
Yeah, exactly. The GPA is so important to you in college, and you get out there and no one gives a shit.
In the 8 months, the 8 weeks that I was traveling with the Dandies in Europe, going to like 21 countries and meeting that many people, I swear to God, I learned more than I learned in the entire previous 4.5 years in college.
About people and about psychology? Is that what you're getting at?
That and the world, and just reading plaques on the side of ancient structures, and just meeting people from so many different countries. Oh, man, I mean, it was just a whirlwind of information coming at you every day, and it felt amazing, and I didn't want it to ever end.
So the aspiration as a child was to be a professional musician. Up until being in the Dandies, had you been in any bands? Like, did you earn any money as a musician up until that point?
Yeah. Did really well actually with Rick Bain and the Genius Position. We were actually called Spin Jupiter Spin at the time, and previous to that, we were called IO. And then I was also played drums for a while in a group called Miss Red Flowers, and which was on Tim Kerr Records, which is the Dandies' first album is on Tim Kerr Records, and opened for the Dandies playing with Miss Red Flowers, and I opened for the Dandies playing with Rick Bain as well. And we used to go and play with Rick Bain. We used to go up and play colleges a lot, and they'd give you like $1,000. We'd play Washington State University, and then play a college in Olympia, and play this college and that college, fraternities and stuff like that. We kind of we played lots of covers as well as originals, and we could play Beastie Boys or whatever they wanted. And they'd pay you real well, treat you really well, actually, give you each a room. They'd kick out some pledges at the fraternity, and you'd get their room. And that was great. We'd make, oh God, we were crushing it, actually. We called it free money because we wanted to, because it didn't seem like work at all. We were having so much fun, so we always just called it free money.
Well, you were living your dream, your childhood dream. The dream that you had in the cul-de-sac, playing to full crowds of
17 years old, just crushing some basement frat party full of like some of the filthiest, drunkest, worst people you've ever seen. But we were having a blast, just rocking. And we used to do this trick where we drilled a hole in the bottom of a tennis ball, and we stuffed a wooden dowel, like a broomstick size wooden dowel, through the bottom of it, and glued it, and then spray painted it all black so it looked like a microphone, like a big fuzzy microphone. And then when the audience at these frat parties was real good and drunk, I would yell into my microphone, because we all sang. I'd yell into my mic and go, hey, Rick, I broke my hi-hat, like real obviously and clear. What did you do? I broke my hi-hat. Let me fix my hi-hat. Can you play a song? Can you guys just do a song while I fix my hi-hat? Make it just as clear as hell for these people that something's gone wrong with the drum set, and these two guys are going to do a song. So Rick would chink, 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 and start playing like, start spreading the news, I'm leaving today. Well, Freitas would just play it, like grab the guitar and just strum it. And before that, Rick would say, hey, do we have the wireless mic? Do you guys want to sing? Do you have the wireless mic? And Andrew would be like, yeah, here it is right here. Here, let me turn it on. And he would go, where's the button? And at this point, I would pull my microphone way down, and just while he's fishing around on the side of the wooden dowel, I would just go, boom, on the mic. And he'd go, oh, there it is, and hand it to Rick. And Rick would go real slowly. We had it all timed, and I would pat on mine, go boom, boom, boom. So everyone in the room, real clear as a bell, saw that this is a real microphone, right? And then Rick would go, he'd turn to me and go like this, and I'd say, you fix that microphone. Like, I'm just down like this, you fix that microphone, we're gonna do some Frank Sinatra. And I just had my head tipped down behind the bass drum while I'm working on my drum set. and so I would sing it. Right. And Rick would walk out there, and he would just go, and Freitas would go, cha-chink, and I'd go, start spreading the news, while I'm bent down hiding behind the bass drum. I'm leaving, and Rick would be lip syncing in the audience. Yeah. And I would start to look, and everyone's looking at him, I'm gonna be a part of it, and I'm closely watching New York. And I'd say, Rick, as soon as he would put his arm around some drunk frat guy, I'd be like, he'd go, hey, buddy, sing it. And as soon as Rick would hear me say, yeah, buddy, sing it, he'd stick that tennis ball in the guy's mouth, and I would go, I'm spreading the news, I'm living today. Really terrible falsetto. And Rick would spin away, and as soon as he put the mic back up to his mouth, I'd go, whoa, all right, I see a future there. I'm just making it up. And Rick would just keep that tennis ball pressed to his mouth, and I could say whatever I wanted,
Oh my God.
And I'd start singing again, and as soon as Rick found somebody else, he'd go, I would say, let's hear, do you want to sing? Do you want to sing? Okay, take it. What's your name? And then as soon as he'd stick that mic in front of their mouths, they would take off singing, and I would be the one making the sound, which was always horrible.
It's such an elaborate, into mid-set prank, right?
And everyone would burst out laughing at how bad, Jimmy sang.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Wow. And they thought he really went for it. Boy, he really went for it. And his voice was cracking and just like a little girl. And Rick would spin away, and the dude's face would be like he thought it was his voice too, in a way, he couldn't believe what had happened.
How many times did you do that, do you think?
Maybe
dozens?
3 or 4 times.
Okay. Jesus, that is very good.
You got to keep yourself entertained.
Did you ever try to get the Dandy Warhols to do that? Get Courtney to do that? Does that ever raise at band meetings?
No. No, I don't think the Dandies are going to be doing Sinatra anytime soon.
What was the moment where you got the offer to drum for the Dandy Warhols?
I was in college, but I was home for the weekend, and it was like Saturday morning, and I got a phone call pretty early, and Dad woke me up saying, "Hey, cousin Courtney's on the phone." It's like, oh. And went to the phone, and he said that Eric had quit the band and that they had to go to Europe in 6 days for their first major European tour. They had been there one time before for just like 3 or 4 concerts. And this time it was like 45 concerts, and they were about to leave in like 6 days. So he said, "Get over here, let's do some singing." And I said, "Well, look, man, let me just come over and we'll talk about this. You know, I don't want to just walk in and start singing. You know, I mean, come on, let's just hang out, do a beer or something, whatever." But then I showed up there, and he's got a guitar already on, and goes, "All right, man, what song do you think you know?" You know, and I'm like, I think we did "Ride" first. I said, let's try "Ride," and sang it perfectly fine, sang it real good. And then he said, "Check this out. I got this new one," and he took off playing the chorus for the song "Get Off," which went on the next album. And I sang the harmony. I just made up a harmony with him, which ended up being the exact harmony I did on the album. And he just set the guitar down, went to the phone, called Pete, who is the guitar player, and he was in LA. And he just called him up and said, "Everything's fine. Get back here. Get back to Portland. We got to rehearse. It's no problem." And then it was all kind of quiet on the phone in there. And then I heard Courtney saying, "I don't care, man. I don't care. I don't care if you can drum or not. This is going to be perfect," or whatever, you know? And like Peter's obviously asking, "Did you hear him drum?" And and then Court and I strummed a little bit more, and then we just went out for a couple beers. Like, it was just no problem. And then we rehearsed a few times, went up, played a gig in Seattle, and then we came back and played a gig in Portland, and then the next day flew to London.
So it wasn't just that you're a drummer. He needed a drummer who could sing. That was important.
Extremely important, because that's the whole sound of the Dandies, is the harmony. Well, it's not the whole sound. The whole sound is all 4 of us, and Zia's tripped out thing with her keys, and Peter's gigantic stereo swirling trip, and his really unique and interesting style of playing leads, and Courtney's, cranking, crushing John Lennon style rhythm guitar, and his big bendy tripped out leads. And but so much of it, a lot of people in the audience, including myself, a lot of times, I love vocals, so I love lyrics and vocal melodies, and you end up just sort of latching onto that. And with the Dandies, that element of the band is myself and Courtney singing 2 notes probably about 70% of the time. Just these 2 notes just ringing out in harmony. So it was really important, and I had seen the band enough to know that was important. And there aren't that many drummers that sing. It's like, Don Henley and Phil Collins and Karen Carpenter. There really aren't that many more,
What was it like to be swept up in that world of a band who was on the cusp of breaking? Because that was it was after Come Down had come out, right?
It was that was the European Come Down tour.
So the band was getting known around Europe and the States and kind of picking up momentum, and here you were thrust into that world, which you had some experience with these college shows, but not to the...
nothing like it. The biggest show I had ever played in my life was that first show at the Rock Candy in Seattle, which is now called the Showbox. It might have been called the Showbox then too. It was. I'd never seen anything like it. Not from the stage. It was pretty important to get those 2 out of the way, because then the European gigs were just straight up massive. It was really difficult, I was learning along the way. I was not playing very well. I was rushing and dragging and concentrating on the words and the vocals. the notes and when the song, how it starts and stops. And when you're doing that, you're not really tripped out in a tripped out zone playing a groove. So it took a couple of years to get comfortable with it all and to reach that level where you're floating, above yourself, and your arms and your legs and your mouth are this other entity that you're sort of a witness to, which is ultimately what you want when you're playing music and you're doing it real good. You want to just detach. It's hard to explain, but you kind of, it's like meditative, you're just floating a little bit outside of your body. You're not really focused on it. Kind of like, I guess the most similar thing would be how when you're driving, if you're like real good at driving a stick shift and you're busy driving through traffic, you can get from one place to another without ever thinking about steering, braking, pushing the clutch in, shifting gears. It's all second nature after 4, 5, 6 years, especially if you drive a lot. You never think about it, like walking or breathing. These things just happen without you thinking about it. And ultimately, you want to experience that on stage as a singer and a drummer, as any musician, where your body is just doing it on its own, and you're just kind of listening and tripping out like anybody else in the audience. That's the ultimate. And I did not get to experience that for the first year or two with the band. I was just too nervous with the crowds, too nervous with the TV cameras, too nervous at interviews, too nervous. It was just all too much right off the bat. But it took me a couple years, and then I relaxed into it and got better. I've gotten better, and so has Courtney, and so has Peter, and so has Zia, and so has the four of us as a whole. We've gotten better year after year after year. I mean, with every gig we get better. We're only getting better, and it's an amazing thing. I mean, we're just getting more and more comfortable, trippier, everything. It's an ongoing process, and it's fun to be a part of it.
During that introductory period when you were learning the ropes and nervous and probably stressed about your performance, did you doubt yourself? Were there moments where you thought, this is too hard, I can't do it, I'm going to quit? Did that cross your mind?
No, not even for 1 second, because I've always liked adventure. I've always liked, jumping off of bridges into water and skiing really fast and jumping off of cliffs skiing and skiing really, really fast and riding my bicycle really fast, jumping my bicycle fast. I was a BMX racer, and like I said previously, doing all the big stunts on the ramps and on street riding on the bike and skateboarding. And for me, that rush the first few years before I settled into it sort of felt like that. It felt like bungee jumping. It was this big adrenaline rush, and after you do it 4 or 5, 6 times and you make it through that whole hour and 40-minute odyssey of the concert, each song being in and of itself its own adventure, you get completely addicted. From the second you come off the stage, you can't wait to do it the next night, and it's just a waiting game till you get to play again. And not even for a second. I know the only way I would have quit is if they, or stopped, is if they would have, said, look, this just isn't working, which I definitely thought was going to happen on a handful of occasions. And I did not expect fully to continue being the drummer. I didn't feel extremely qualified. I felt like Courtney and I sang very well, but I wasn't grooving very well for the first couple years, and I was just glad that they were, patient with me and stuck it out, because it's like the greatest thing in the world.
I first met you in 2010 when my then girlfriend, now wife, Rachel, we went across to Portland and met you and interviewed you at the auditorium. And the impression that I got then, you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, is that Courtney tends to call most of the shots when it comes to creative decisions about the band and that kind of thing. Is that correct? Is that a correct assumption?
I'd say he definitely has the final word, but he doesn't want to do anything if there's not approval. He has to see approval, and we all like that. Everybody likes that in every facet of life. But we get when we have mixes, coming right down to it, we get our friends in there, crank up the songs, drink lots of wine, and get everybody in there, just party until the sun comes up, just to experience the energy and what's going on. And we'll have our engineer in there for as long as he can stomach it. Swapping mixes, muting things, switch to that previous mix. What about the one from 2 months ago? Let's hear that. And just see how the energy flows through the room. That's and on a smaller scale, or just on a more acute scale, that's just the four of us, in the band. And I have, we all have freedom to play whatever. Zia, myself, Pete and Courtney, we all play whatever we want. Fortunately, we're all really on a similar trip. There's never any real problems. We experiment with so many things that sooner or later the combination just clicks. Zia will try a few different bass lines, I'll try a few different beats. And, but I mean, definitely at the end of the day, Courtney writes these songs and he doesn't want to have his voice representing something that sounds goofy to him, or that sounds too derivative of a style of music that he's uncomfortable with. So he definitely has the final say, but we are collaborative all the way. And Court and I flown all over the world mixing. He doesn't want to go by himself, and so he and I are kind of, I don't know what it is. We keep a similar schedule as far as sleep goes, and when we like to go out and drink and this and that. And we're very compatible in that fashion. So he and I were, most of the time, not all the time, but quite a few times, were the ones, if we're mixing in London or mixing in Box, England, or if we're mixing in New York, he and I would kind of go out there first, and then the rest of the band would kind of catch up with us a little bit later, and we'd really kind of finalize these mixes. But Court doesn't want to make these decisions on his own. He wants to have people around that'll have insight and say, wait a second, let's try this, let's do this, let's change this. And I remember from the very first time I was in the studio, it might have been the very first day, I remember saying, Court, I think I had him, he was aside from our engineer and the rest of the band. I said, I really think that the bass drum should just blah, 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 whatever. And Court goes, don't tell me, man, tell Greg. And then I knew right away that that's how this works. And it's a great system. I love the Dandy's records. They're just so balanced and trippy, beautiful melodies and lyrics. I love them.
Coming towards the end, because I'm conscious of your time and your desire for some sleep, perhaps, before you hit the stage, I am highly taken by Anyway, the Immigrant Union album this year.
Thanks.
It's one of my favorite albums of this year.
Thank you, man.
Fantastic.
Appreciate that.
Tell me a bit about how that came together, because I believe the band itself was formed around 2010, 2011, and you yourself have been based in Australia since you married an Australian.
Yeah, I had moved to Australia, and I had known Bob for a few years before I moved to Australia. When I did move here, when I was planning on moving here, I got a hold of him and said, do you have some songs? I got some songs. Should we try to do something? And we just went for it and started writing tunes. It took a long time for it to come together, It's just not easy getting a band to click, but me and Bob and Peter stuck it out through the whole thing. And and we made that first album. We flew to Portland to make that first album. I wanted to do it with Greg Williams, who gets a real, we wanted to make a real kind of 70s, kind of classic country sounding record, kind of like a real, like Eagles' greatest hit sounding, with sound-wise, just EQ-wise, instrumentation-wise. And Greg was really good at that kind of thing. So we went to Portland and got Greg to do that, made a beautiful album, and then recently, then just a couple years later, we had enough songs to do a second album, which is called Anyway, and really happy with the progression of the band. I think we're better songwriters, but just lyrically, the melodies and the chords, and I like the sounds of it. We had great musicians on that. The lineup back then was Bone Sloan and Dave Moody and Courtney Barnett, and they're all really cool musicians and brought a lot of cool ideas and sounds to the table, and made, I think, of just a fantastic, really dreamy, beautiful record. We had Matt over at Color Sound Studios in Altona. He had all the cool gear. And yeah, I'm just really proud of this record. I think it's just a really nice trip all the way through. We wanted to make an album that flows from start to finish, that you could put on and smoke a big doobie and really enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, you totally nailed it. And I think I read a blog post somewhere where Bob was talking about how much you guys agonized over the track listing, getting the flow right, and it's perfect, honestly. Like, I couldn't imagine it being any better.
Thanks. Yeah, that was a lot of work because we actually recorded 15 songs, and there's 10 on the album.
Yeah.
So we're going to put the other 5, we're going to work on an order for those 5 and make an EP. Because those ones, they're fantastic, but they just vibe-wise, it was hard to slot them in. Because when you want to make that trip, you don't want some song that sounds like it was done in a different studio, or it sounds like it was in a different headspace. So those 5, though, they're gorgeous in and of themselves. So we're gonna put out an EP next year of that, and then we're already working on our next record right now. So
great to hear. Does songwriting come easily to you? Is that something that just occupies your time, or
it does?
It
yeah,
has to be labored over.
Oh, I do it all the time. I'm constantly strumming and singing and stuff. But a decent melody and a good lyric, it doesn't come easy. I think pretty much every song I've ever written has been recorded, except for the 4 more that I have that'll go on this next album. I mean, I don't have any full completed songs. I might have a couple of them laying around, but there aren't too many full completed songs of mine that don't get recorded, because if it's done and it's organized and it's arranged, it is going to be recorded, because otherwise I never would have spent that much time getting it situated, because I'm not very good at it, and I think I know the appropriate thing to do. I know the right moves, but working it out's not easy, and writing lyrics is not easy for me. But I just kind of agonize over it. But I don't want to hear something for the rest of my life that makes me cringe or that I know isn't quite right. So so I think we'll hopefully do that on the next album, and I'm really proud of Anyway. I like how that worked out.
Are you trying to tell stories through your songs? Are you trying to capture particular moods?
I guess so. I switch stories through my favorite ones. I kind of tell like 4 or 5 different stories. There's an all-encompassing thing, about maybe traveling to. A lot of these ones on Anyway were about moving to Australia, getting ready to move to Australia, my kind of meditating on my previous life before moving to Australia. That was a big transitional moment for me, and that's when I was strumming guitar. It's a lot of what was on my mind, so that's what falls out, Like that song Anyway, and the song Shameless, and the song obviously I Can't Return, which is about having these butterflies, about moving. And yeah.
What's that feeling like to put these stories down in song, and to play the right chords, and to play the right beat, and to get it all down on record as you imagine? How does that feel to you as a musician?
It's really, really fun. We like to, the further and further along it gets, when it gets to those kind of rough mixes and then those semi-final mixes, Bob and I, we just sat up for hours and hours, days and days, listening to him over and over with a notepad out, writing down the tiny little changes we need to make to the mix, or what little guitar thing needs to be muted real quick just before the vocal comes in, some distraction. But we just love it. It's such a relief each time you'd write one of those things down, knowing that that Matt can fix it, when you know that it can be fixed, and you just have that feeling that, what a relief, here's this list of things we're going to fix and everything's going to be perfect forever, But I mean, it's never completely perfect. There's still a couple little things I would have changed, but it's really, really close, and we're pretty happy with it.
Your performance, you're a singer and guitarist in Immigrant Union, correct? You don't play drums in Immigrant Union? Is that a nice break from your regular style of performance and writing with the Dandy Warhols?
Yeah, it's taught me a lot. It's made me a way, way, way better and groovier, cooler, more relaxed and sensible drummer after playing with a handful of drummers and kind of knowing what I like and don't like. As a guitarist, it's let me know what Courtney and Zia and Peter are dealing with when I drum, and it's changed so much. Like, there's footage of the Dandies playing on YouTube that I was really quite into checking out, and somebody'd put it on, I'd dig it, or post it somewhere, and I like that one. And then after playing with Union, you'd watch that and I'd see a lot of things I'd do differently, which I would just adjust. And without Immigrant Union, there's no way I would have known those things. So so I've really enjoyed that element of it. Plus, it's just nice to do something different for the other half of the year,
Yeah. The physicality of being out front with guitar and singing, how does that compare to being behind the kit?
It just makes me pretty nervous, but it's easier to have a drum set in front of you and not feel like you're the one that everyone's kind of looking at. But I've gotten used to it recently, and as long as the lights aren't too bright on stage. If the lights are really bright on stage, or when we play during the day, I get a little bit nervous. I'd rather it just be kind of nice and dark on stage, but I don't know how to put on a show. I really only know how to just play the guitar and sing. I don't behave any differently on stage than I do in rehearsal, really. So, I don't know any rock moves or anything. So I don't know if I'm pretty unaware of the way I look while I'm playing. So I'd rather other people be the same and keep it nice and dark.
Well, your visual identity is quite distinctive. Your nickname is Fathead, correct? Which comes from, I believe, your distinctive afro haircut.
Yeah.
And that plays into the Dandy Warhols visual image I noticed a few years ago when you played the Tivoli. The show began with silhouettes of each of you, projected onto the back wall, and you each look like, separate characters in this.
Yeah, there are definitely four characters in that group.
Yeah. Well, coming towards the end, where do you draw inspiration from? What keeps you energized and motivated when it comes to music?
Little bit of listening to new music. I guess going to festivals, really. I don't listen to a ton of modern music at home, but playing with the Dandy Warhols, you go to a lot of festivals and you check out bands from the side of the stage and you check out what they're doing, and suddenly something will just hit you. Like recently, that seeing Alabama Shakes live really made me realize how patient you can be, and that's an inspiration. And then I guess just the same old thing when it comes to songwriting. It's just your life experiences and what you're upset about or what you're really happy about. Just your emotional headspace at the time that you're singing some words that happen to fit a nice melody and just drop and land in the right place miraculously suddenly. Usually whatever the words are when that happens are just whatever's happening at the present time, or maybe kind of reminiscing about something, but it's always something about your life,
First person perspective.
Yeah, I mean, that's the inspiration, is your own life.
The last thing I want to ask you about, tell me the story of filming the video for In Time. Because it's quite a striking video, and I believe you were the one holding the camera.
Yeah, I wanted to... I'd wanted to make this video for a while. We never knew what song we were going to do it to, but we needed a video for In Time. I said maybe that trip to the festival and back idea would be good for this one. And Bob's like, yeah, let's do it. So we got some passes to, I can't remember what festival it was actually now. Soundwave, yeah. And the idea that I wanted to do was just do a stop animation, sped up journey from your home to the festival, experience the festival, and then the taxi ride back to your home. I just had this pictured in my head. I like that stop animation look. So that's what we did. And the idea was that you went everywhere. You never left Bob alone for even 1 second, which is why you end up following him right into the pisser like 3 different times. Because it takes a long time to shoot stop animation. I think like an hour of filming, you end up with like 2 minutes of footage. So I had the thing on, it's a 8-minute song, and I didn't film all the time. I set the thing down, but anytime we would get up and move, or anytime we would switch settings, I'd follow him and made sure to film plenty as it went into the night, so that you got that feeling. And then the taxi ride back home, and Bob's back home. That's just a simple idea, but it's just kind of fun to experience the festival in hyper fast forward motion.
Yeah, and that takes a lot of focus, because I'm imagining a few hours in, you're like, why the fuck did I ever decide this is so tedious?
Yeah, well, and then in order to make it look even remotely watchable, Bob has to move slowly. So people were sort of looking at us going like, what the heck? Because like when he's walking all the way into the festival, he's just walking strangely slow.
So like half speed?
Yeah, like half speed, like slow motion.
Right.
The whole way. And he was turning his head slowly.
Oh.
And he would do everything really slowly. So people were like looking at him like, holy crap, like what's that guy? What did he take? Yeah, so he did that the whole day pretty much, just walked really slowly. So that was a lot of work for him too. He had to walk just as slow as he could, really. And then when you watch it back, it looks like he's going wildly fast. But if you filmed him with stop animation and he was walking normal speed, it would just be a blur of chaos. You wouldn't really see him.
But did you do a test beforehand? Did you know what would come out?
No, we tested the amount of, how many photos you need, like how much, because you can go like, 6 frames per second, 3 frames per second, or 1 frame per second. And I think what you're looking at throughout that is 3 frames per second.
Was this a specific type of camera that you used for this?
Mm-hmm.
Is that expensive? No?
No, the feature only existed on the Canon line one time, on the Canon G9, because I have the G11, and then later I got the G15 when these cameras kind of fart out and things go haywire with them, as they're designed to do. And that none of the other ones had it. Unfortunately, I think it's a really cool thing, because you can set it on a tripod and watch the sun go up, or you set it pointed at a stream and it looks really cool, or pointed at the clouds and they blow by really fast. It's a really cool feature. You have to just hold it very, very steady. When you're walking around, that's a little bit difficult, but I would just look at the corners and just keep a nice frame as I'm inching along behind Bob. The G9's the only one. But now the iPhone actually has it, but you can't, when you email it to someone, it just comes out like normal, I think. Or no, that's the slow-mo that does that. I think you can do it with the newest iPhone actually has a feature like that. But when you go on YouTube and put in stop animation, you can hardly find anything. Nobody really knows how to use that feature. No one does it. But it's I think it's aesthetically, it's really a cool thing to do. The Dandy Warhols did one with my G9 as well, called "This Is the Tide."
Right, I've seen that.
And that video was shot with the exact same camera, doing the same kind of trickery.
Wasn't that your song?
Yeah.
Yeah, good song.
Oh, thanks, man.
Congrats.
Oh, thanks.
Well, yeah, I've taken a lot of your time already. You've had a fascinating career. It's been great to get to know a bit more about you. I'm sure you've got many more years of creativity ahead of you.
Yeah, I hope so.
Thanks so much, Brent.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
for listening to Penmanship, and thank you to my guest, Brent DeBoer. You can find show notes to this episode, including links to the music that we discussed, at penmanshippodcast.com. I'd also love to hear your feedback on this interview and any other episode that you've listened to. You can email me, andrew@penmanshippodcast.com. The theme song, as ever, is Eternally Yours by Brisbane band Laughing Clowns. That's it for now. Thanks for listening. Till next time.